This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Today on CityCast DC, Jessica Sidman, Washingtonian food editor and friend of CityCast, is here, and she is going to walk us through her list of what's in and out in DC dining in 2025. Today is Thursday, January 9th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Sidman.
Hi, Schaefer.
So you wrote up your 2025 in and out trends for food. Can you just tell us, how do you decide, what's in, what's out?
I just read the vibes and...
It sounds highly unscientific.
It is highly unscientific. But, all year round, I am reporting on what's happening in the restaurant scene, talking to people who work in the industry, talking to diners. So I like to think I have a pulse on what's going on.
So what do you think is going to be the most controversial trend on your list? Either controversial because you picked it or controversial because people have strong feelings about it.
Okay, I already know the answer to this. The most controversial was out service fee outrage, in service fee apathy. And some online commenters said, what did a service fee write this list?
Can you explain this for the uninitiative? What is service fee outrage and what is service fee apathy?
So I think everyone's probably familiar with the service fees that have taken over DC menus where, there's kind of a mandatory fee, which can be anywhere from 3% to 20%. And it makes tipping very confusing. And a lot of it has to do with Initiative 82, the ballot initiative that will eliminate the tipped wage, which is basically the way that servers and bartenders, et cetera, are paid. And this is a topic that caused a lot of outrage over the past year. I think to some extent, the reason I said in was people have kind of gotten used to it, and you don't hear people bitching about it all the time like they did at the outset. But I will say a lot of online commenters let me know that they are still outraged. So that may be the most controversial.
This wasn't on your list, but I wonder if this is if we're in for more changes still. If I understand the history right, there was this ballot initiative that eliminated the tipped minimum wage, which is to say this much lower than minimum wage salary that servers got on the expectation that tips would then make up the bulk of their wages. The idea now is that wages are supposed to be the bulk of your wages. And restaurants, to make up the difference, began putting in this service charge or various forms of service charge, leading to outrage. There was also a lot of confusion around how much of a tip should I leave, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's a couple things going on. Number one, there was a study from the Economic Policy Institute saying I-82 is backfiring. Number two, the incoming president has vowed to end taxes on tips. How is either this idea that Initiative 82 may be having the opposite effect from the one it was supposed to have of improving the lot of servers, and this change in taxes, this possible change in taxes, how are either of these things likely to affect the tipping thing?
Yeah, okay, a lot of questions at once.
I aim to please.
From the beginning, a lot of people in the service industry were against this change because they said, it's fixing a problem that isn't really a problem for the vast majority of people, that, we already make far more than, the minimum wage. There's certainly been a lot of people who it's made things more expensive. It's kind of upended the traditional tipping system because it was rolled out. It's being rolled out gradually. You had a lot of restaurants doing different models, and you still have that a little bit. But I do think at this point, a lot of restaurants are trying to go to the model that they're going to just have at the end of this when there is no more tipped wage and the minimum wage is the minimum wage. I think, though, Trump's initiative, no tax on tips, is interesting because that would seem to disincentivize doing these service fees, because I'm sure everyone would rather work at a place that relies on tips rather than service fees if they're not taxed. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. There's still a lot that's, I think, going to happen in this space.
Or it may need to wait for your 2026 in and out list.
Exactly.
But so for 2025, let's start with drinks. All right. You say martinis and record bars are in. Oh, why?
Well, martinis have been in for a while. Obviously, the espresso martini had a huge moment. I think that's kind of just evolved into martini mania in general. Every restaurant and bar now kind of has their signature martini. There's a lot of really, weird, dirty martinis out there. And I think it's one of those things that does have to do with kind of the economic moment also, where things are so expensive. When people go out, they really want a bang for their buck. And if you are drinking to really drink, you want something strong. And a martini is very strong. There's just been this martini renaissance, and I think it'll just continue. And I think that bars and restaurants are just going to double down on it. And instead of just having the one signature martini on the menu, some of them will be like, let's have a whole menu of martinis.
Correct me if I'm wrong. With bars, or the bars of a restaurant, you've always been able to order off the menu in ways that are not the case in regular restaurants. Like you could go to a bartender and say, make me blah, 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 blah.
Sure. You can get a martini, I'm guessing, at pretty much every bar anywhere.
Right. So you don't so the menu is just advertising in this case.
Right. But I mean, also, a lot of what bars and restaurants are doing is a much more creative than just here's a straight up, gin martini or a dirty martini. They're incorporating all of these unique ingredients, clarified olive brine or MSG or fat washed with whatever. There's one that has mozzarella cheese brine in it. So there's all kinds of stuff. So I think you'll see some creative tweaks on the martini.
Hey, what's a record bar? And explain what the attraction is.
Yeah. So another thing on the list, I said out speakeasies in record bars or listening bars. I think this is something that's been really popular in Japan and then New York, and is really coming to DC. But it's places where they, have a vinyl collection and are really kind of putting that at the forefront of the bar experience. There's a new place in DuPont Circle called Press Club. The menu is a vinyl record. They also, they pick one album to play for the night, and they'll just play it from start to finish.
Wait, can you explain the culture then to me? If I go in there with you, let's say you and me go there, and because I adore you so much, we would be eager to catch up and talk and talk and talk. Are you supposed to do that, or are you supposed to sit there and listen reverently to the record being played?
I mean, the ones in DC, they're really just normal bars, but the background music is the vinyl record. But yeah, you don't have to all sit there and listen intently and sip your cocktail quietly. You can still catch up with your friends.
Do they announce in advance what they're going to play?
So I've been impressed, though. They do not announce, but they do display the album cover prominently.
So you also wrote that you think non-alcoholic drinks are now the norm in DC. When I say non-alcoholic drinks, I don't mean water. I mean creative cocktails that just happen to not be alcohol. How do you think that's changed the drink landscape?
I think it was really a novelty to have non-alcoholic cocktails. Again, more than just a lemonade. And slowly this sector has really grown. There are so many non-alcoholic versions of spirits now, whether it's spirit-free gin or whiskey and aperitifs. And there's so many products. There's a lot of interest, even from people who aren't completely sober and, maybe having that option and drinking less. Maybe you have one cocktail and then you want to keep going, but you don't want the hangover. So you switch to a non-alcoholic drink. And so I think just because this has really caught on in the culture, not just DC, but beyond, a lot of businesses are trying to cater to it and have those options. And I think pretty much every new place that opens, they're going to have something, which wasn't always the case. But I definitely see an effort to cater to that community as more of the norm now.
Another thing that I was very heartened to see is you said out is garnishes with cocktails, in is snacks with cocktails. Do you have a favorite, and where can I find it?
Well, I guess it's front of mind because we were just talking about it. Press Club, again, and DuPont Circle, they serve a number of their cocktails come with little snacks, whether it's, like some little nuts or just a bite or two. So I'm hoping that catches on because it's nice to just have like a little nibble with your drink.
Did you know in DC it's actually illegal to toss household batteries in the trash? Batteries have to be recycled, and Call to Recycle is here to help. DC's official battery recycling program has convenient locations all over the city where you can drop off all kinds of household batteries. Think AA, AAA, even those rechargeable ones. Just find the drop-off spot closest to you by going to calltorecycle.org/locator. That's with the number 2. So again, that's calltorecycle.org/locator. Because recycling your batteries isn't just the law, it also helps protect our environment and our community. So clear out that junk drawer and do a little good. Go to calltorecycle.org/locator today.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
All right, so let's get to food. You are big on steakhouses, fancy shaved ice, West African food, and chefy Korean food. Which of these are you most excited to see take off?
Well, I said out bistros in steakhouses. I think, French food and bistros really had a moment for the last year or more. A lot of places opening, but I do think, I don't know that I'm necessarily excited about this one, but I do think steakhouses are going to have a moment. One, in part, because we have this incoming Republican administration and Republicans tend to gravitate toward red meat. But also beyond that fact, there are actually some exciting steakhouses that are opening. For example, the founder of Taco Bamba, which is a super popular taqueria chain, is opening a South American style steakhouse in Vienna. And I'm super excited about that. The Voltaggio brothers of Top Chef fame, they just opened a steakhouse in Frederick. And the chef of Gravitas, which is a Michelin star restaurant in Ivy City, he's opening a steakhouse as well. Then I would say one that I'm more excited about, though, it would be the rise of West African food in DC. Obviously, we had Dogon from Chef Kwame open near the wharf, which has been super popular and is just a fantastic restaurant focused on Afro-Caribbean cuisine. And now we have Almina from Chef Eric Adjupong, who is also of Top Chef fame, opening on 14th Street. And the menu there will be kind of an upscale take on food from his native Ghana. So I think that's really one to watch, and it's opening in just a couple weeks.
I mean, it's the upscale take piece of it is particularly interesting because I think a lot of people associate food from sort of relatively recent immigrant groups with this is something you're going to go to the suburbs to eat, and it's going to be no frills, focused on authenticity for people who grew up eating it, as opposed to white tablecloths focused on chefiness for people who may see it as something new to them. But it sounds to me like you're describing the latter, something chefy, not just meant for the Ghanaian community and the curious.
Yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of the West African restaurants in the area have been more kind of mom and pop, traditional, homey, hole in the wall kind of places. But, like so many other cuisines, we're seeing the chefification of them, if you will. We've seen it with everything else from Afghan to Korean, Vietnamese. And, so I think this moment is far overdue. And we do have some very talented chefs who can introduce Washington to some of these cuisines. So I'm excited. It's, I think it's something that a lot of people here maybe aren't as familiar with. And I think it will only continue to grow.
So you made this interesting point of how vibe as a defining factor of restaurants is on the way out, and the people you think are going to be looking more for value in 2025. What spots come to mind as examples of that?
Yeah, I think there's just, a lot of the restaurants that have opened recently have been very concerned about aesthetics and the feeling and feeling like a big night out and the scene, if you will. And, I do think that will continue because I think, when things are so expensive, people want an experience. But also, a lot of it feels very manufactured at this point. And I think, again, things are so expensive. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people are really just looking for value at this moment.
And when you say value, do you mean like the food is affordable, or do you mean something else?
I don't think that value has to mean cheap. It just means that you want to feel like you're getting your money's worth. So I feel like there have been a lot of places that have kind of felt like they're really all about the show, and maybe there will be a trend toward it's still a little bit of the show, but more of the substance.
Right, because I think in an age when a lot of people like to cook too, the show is often the major difference between what you get out of the house and in the house. I mean, when you choose to leave home for dinner, part of what you're paying for is being treated like royalty and wowed by the environment. It's a form of value, I just mean to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's still going to be a big part of going out in DC. And I think, people are going to look for places where the vibe feels genuine and it doesn't feel forced. It is that tricky thing where it seems like a lot of bars and restaurants feel like they can kind of just create it with maybe some loud music and some whatever, neon lights or dim lighting or whatever. But, there's a lot more to creating a real vibe in a place.
So you also talked about, this was the one I was super curious about, late night at Union Market.
Yeah. Union Market is really the hot neighborhood right now. So much has opened there in the last year. And there's still a lot more openings to come in the coming year. And, when that area first started getting developed, as the Union Market Food Hall, I think of it as like a lunch destination. Like you go to the food hall for your lunch. But a lot of the places that are opening now have more of a late night vibe.
What are the rules in DC about like how late you may stay open to serve food or drink?
I forget off the top of my head, but places like La Choukran from Chef Michael Rafidi, which is kind of a French Middle Eastern bistro bar. And again, they've got the vinyl and they've got the vibe. And they do a lot of late night business from what I've heard. Also, Minetta Tavern to a New York import from restaurateur Keith McNally. Upstairs, it has this very fancy lounge called the Lucy Mercer Bar. That's kind of a fancier late night haunt. And then there's more places coming, like Bar Betsy, which is from the owners of Jane Jane, which is a popular cocktail bar on 14th Street. I think that could potentially be another late night place. So
you're thinking that Union Market may become basically a neighborhood that's where the action's going later than on 14th Street or DuPont or H Street?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. If it isn't already.
And is the action spurred by people who live around there? I mean, it's a neighborhood that's obviously seen a lot of development, or do people drive in or Uber in to hang out?
I mean, there are certainly a lot of apartments, condos over there, but it's really become a destination. People come in from all over the city or even, the region, I think, because there are so many destination places over there now. Obviously, Steven Starr has planted his flag in the neighborhood with El Presidente and Pastis. Chef Edward Lee is like another celebrity chef, opened this upscale Korean tasting menu restaurant there. So there's a lot of destination restaurants in that neighborhood and more to come.
I'm curious how, before I let you go, how people have responded to your predictions.
There's a lot of agreement overall on the list, so I feel good about that, except for people still being outraged about service fees. I think my list last year was more controversial because I said happy hour was out and late night was in.
Were you right?
I was a little bit right. I don't know. I think happy hour has really morphed. I don't think it's the cultural thing in DC it used to be where the work from home and again, prices, what they are, like it's not the value it used to be. So I do think I was right, but people don't like when you say happy hour is out.
Just, why don't we reconnect on like December 31st and you can assess how this year's predictions went.
We'll see. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell everyone about it at your next tasting experience? You can also rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.